Welcome to another episode of A Stranger, a Suitcase and a Story. I'm Anton van der Walt and my co-host is Ben Liebenberg. Hi Ben, how are you doing?
Hey Anton, how are you?
Oh, very well, thanks.
Yeah, good to be here.
This is a podcast where we explore the journeys of people who've left everything familiar behind to build a new life in a new land. Together we'll delve into stories of migration, identity and belonging, what people carried with them, what they left behind, and what they've discovered along the way. Whether you're an immigrant yourself thinking about starting over or just curious about the stories behind the suitcase, you're in the right place. In today's episode, we're talking to somebody who's made the bold move, not just for himself, but his whole family. And today's guest, very happy to say, is Afzal Ali, who arrived in Australia just a few months ago from Chennai, India, with a suitcase full of dreams, his wife and his two teenage sons in tow. A seasoned HR professional and a self-declared tech geek, traded a well-established life and career for the unknown, all in the pursuit of a brighter future for his family. His mantra is love it, like it, live with it. Afzal, welcome to the podcast here. We're so super chuffed to have you here.
Likewise, thank you so much for the opportunity, Anton and Ben. I'm super thrilled to be here, and after having listened to your stories, it is definitely a true inspiration, and I'm eager to share my experience with the amazing audience with the belief that it will definitely help someone who is a stranger with a suitcase, and definitely they have a story as well.
Yeah, it's a story we're interested in. Yes, Ben.
Welcome. It's great to have you here as a guest. We were really excited, Anton, about this not being about us, but really about somebody else. But I think I just want to share with all those guys listening. We had a bit of anticipation last time we spoke. There's been a big happening in your family since we spoke. Yeah, tell us, man, what's going on? Do we have another Aussie or not?
Yeah, we do. It's the first. We were saying, we hope it all goes well, and it did. So just about 2 weeks and a couple of days, we've got a new first generation Van der Walt in Australia. Awesome. It's a boy. His name is Xavier Lee Van der Walt, and it was never real for me until it actually happened. And so now all I want to do is to go and visit my grandson. That's all I'm interested in.
Congratulations, Anton. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Become a pest to the kids, do you?
Yeah, it's like a weird thing because I go there and Leanne is the grandmother, the Nan. So I'm Opa and she's Nan. And so she's the one that actually is useful there. I'm not useful at all. They have not asked me to change nappies or anything like that. I don't think I'll volunteer for that. So I clean things and cook things. That's what I do. That's my extent of being useful.
Good stuff. Well, It's all about family then tonight. That's quite applicable.
Maybe we'll start with who you are, where you come from. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, before we take the trip across to Australia.
Sure. Thank you, Anton, once again. So I am a resident of Chennai, India, which is the capital city of Tamil Nadu, a district in India, in the southern part of India. Born and brought up there and did my entire schooling, college, everything in the same city. Just to give you some more past, my grandfathers are basically from a state called Gujarat, which is in the northwestern side of India. They migrated to Chennai, and then my dad and me and the entire generations after generations were born here. Born in Chennai. I have to remind myself, yes, I am in Australia. So yeah, I'm born there. It's the right thing. Yeah, born in Chennai, and India is full of multicultures and languages, right? From our mother tongue standpoint, our mother tongue is Gujarati, which is spoken in the northwestern side.
Okay.
So we speak Gujarati at home. And I studied in an Anglo-Indian school, so English was our first language of education right from the kindergarten till my high school. And it was a mandate, and I still remember that in the school, this principal was so strict that we had a rule that if you speak in any other language, you will be charged 50 rupees as a fine, as a penalty. And 50 rupees was a big deal at that point in time. And then in the year 2000 is when we graduated. So our batch is called the 2K batch because we passed out in the year 2000.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why my foundation in English is so strong. Even though we didn't like it sometimes that you had to pay a 50 rupee fine if you're speaking in any other language, But because of that, I think that became a ritual and a thing. Even at home, my dad enforced this, that we speak English. My grandmother, I know I'm probably jumping to my family side, but just to give you a context, since we're talking about English, even at home we had this rule, and my grandmom, who has never been to school, even she tried to speak in the broken English that she knew. So these things were a good foundation for us to set up our spoken capability. And then I did my bachelor's in computer application from one of the reputed colleges in Chennai.
Okay.
And then I went on to London to do my master's in HR. Interestingly, life has been a little different, and I see a little bit of myself in your stories when I heard about you guys being adventurers, right? So I have always been someone who just takes life one day at a time, not having like a plan, right? Because until my class 12, I was dreaming of becoming a chartered accountant, something to do with accountancy. But because my friends wanted to do computers, I joined the board and I said, okay, let's do computers, because at that point in time, computers was the in thing. That was something that was really common. So I ended up doing 3 years of my bachelor's degree. At the end of it, the natural path was master's in computers. But because 6 of my other friends in college wanted to pursue a master's degree abroad, I decided to join the board. So I said, all right, let me sign it up. And that's how I landed up in London to do my master's in HR.
Okay.
So coming from accounts to computers to HR, having seen a spectrum of things in life. So that's
tell
about...
me a bit about growing up in India and what it was like, and what was your childhood like? Was it easy, difficult?
It was amazing. I am the second born in my family. I have an elder sister and a younger brother. I was a very notorious brat. I used to be the most mischievous of all in my family, as not just in my family, but my extended family as well. To the extent that during the summer vacations, my mum is from Mumbai, which is another city. So we used to go to my grandma's place for our summer holidays. Now, whenever they got to know that summer is around and Afzal is going to come over, they used to call my mum and say that, is it okay that you come alone and don't bring him along? Can you just leave him back home? I used to be very mischievous. I used to fight a lot with my younger brother and my other cousins. My younger brother was really weak, so a little push on his back and he used to fall down and break his arm or break his leg. When I used to go to my nan's house, I used to go and break the flower pots and just try to do things very differently. I've always been this curious guy. What does the mouthwash do? When I was young, I used to use my uncle's razor and try to, I saw him shaving, let me try it out. I didn't even have a hair growing at that point in time. So been very curious right from a very young age, and my maternal grandmother has been really someone who has supported me and protected me and shielded me a lot from the wrath of people around when I go and do all these naughty things. Growing up in Chennai was amazing. I just loved the family environment. I'm always a guy, my mantra has been family comes first. And right from childhood, I have grown in a joint family. And when I say joint family, it's a huge family. My dad has 5 brothers and sisters, so we all used to live together. So I've seen a childhood where I have lived with my uncles, my aunts, my grandma, my cousins, and we used to live right next to our grandma, another relative of ours, which had a joint family of like around 40 members. So you can imagine 40 of theirs and 20 of ours, like 60 of us becoming a... And this is just an example of just 2 families. Like that, we had around 12 families in Chennai, right? My dad went to the same school that I did. So I should say I went to the same school like my dad did. And my children went to the same school that I went. So it was the 3rd generation studying in the same school. And when my dad went to the school, it was he and his cousins, plus or minus 3 or 4 classes, that entire clan going to school together. And it was a boys only school.
Okay.
And just a street away, we had a girls only school, and all the girls and ladies in my house now, they all went to that school. And again, generation after generations, they have gone into the same school. It was fun. We have lived an amazing life. Again, as I said, naughty, enjoyed every bit of it. So close to family that is something that I miss till date after migrating here. And of course, there's something that vacuum
I can
will never be
imagine.
filled.
And we definitely want to get there, because I think where you are now is so very different. And so you grew up in that environment and you got these huge families. But to ask you the question, that is something that must be playing a lot on your mind at the moment. You've not been here very long. You've been here 6 months. You probably haven't gone back. And it must be playing on your mind quite a lot.
Absolutely, it does. As I said, this is something that vacuum is still felt in the family, and is something that can never be, this gap can never be filled, no matter how long we live here in Australia, right? Because having grown up in an environment with so many people around you, maternal grandparents, paternal grandparent, in-laws, and their whole clan, and so on, and then coming over with just the four of us to a place where there was only one known family out here in Newcastle that we knew, and starting life afresh, did definitely take a toll on us in the initial few months. We still miss our families, and that is something which we will continue to, but it has been a challenge, and that is something that I think we did sign up for this when we took this decision to migrate here, but we never knew that it's going to be this difficult.
I've interrupted you. So you've had the experience, at least before that, you've gone over to the UK, you said, to go and study. So did you have any family at this stage, or just you on your own to go study?
It was, again, at that point I had 6 of my classmates from the same college that I studied in Chennai. It was 7 of us who went there, and when we went there, we realized that there were few other from the same college, some of us seniors, and eventually it was a group of 40 of us, all from Chennai, living in London. And that's a story on its own. We have just had the amazing time of my life. It taught us a lot of things. Very first time I left my family and being away from them, there was a lot of values that I had learned during my life in Chennai, and then moving to UK, and we all know how the culture is. The culture is very different in London compared to India. Having come from a family which is closely knitted, where the family ethics and values are of utmost importance, and migrating to a culture where at a very young age, children move out and they live their life with their own. And again, I've been a teetotaler. I've never touched alcohol in my life. Again, that is something because of the religious values. And going to an environment where I had to do a lot of part-time jobs. So I have worked in a bar selling alcohol, but obviously you can't drink it because it's against your religion. There have been so many instances where I've been tested in many ways. There have been so many challenges, situations that came across where I had to stay steadfast on my ethics and values that were taught to me, and it was not easy. It was definitely a very different experience having gone through that. But again, instead of family, I had my friends to back up on. They were there as a pillar to me, and that is the time I got married, and I took my wife along on a dependent visa, and we were there for 8 months after our married life, and then we had to come back to India again because of family reason. That was a stage where I had to choose between family and settling down in London after doing my master's degree. I was on the pathway of getting a work permit and then eventually a permanent residency and a citizenship. But at that stage, I put my family first and I decided to come back to India.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. But if I'm listening to you on this podcast, because this is the question I have already in my mind, is so you spend a lot of the legwork in London, and here you are in Australia. It's two very different places, and also from a distance point of view and everything like that. So why have you decided to come to Australia as opposed not go back to London or England?
That's an amazing question, Anton. Given a choice, I would have definitely wanted to do that, but let me answer it this way. So after coming back from India, some of my friends came back and some of them still stayed back, right? They got married, they had a family. Some of them continue to do a casual job while the others have settled down and got a decent job there. But after coming back, and as I said, the reason I came back was my family, right? And my mom's health was not well, and somebody had to be at home to look after all the family affairs. And my younger brother was not married then, so my wife was the only option to look after the house and stuff like that. So we took a conscious call. She gave up her career and she sacrificed her career and chose to be that lady who really looks up and takes up all the household affairs. And then 3 years later in our marriage, my elder son was born, and 2 years later my younger son was born. And in the initial days, having a support system around was really important. There have also been some incidents at the personal front wherein we really needed family to be along with us, and it was really a blessing, right? Now, since then, it has always been at the back of my mind that even though, of course, family does come first, but had I stayed there, I would have had a better future for my family, if I can put it that way. No regrets though. Even after coming in, it took me almost 4 months to get a job back home. Having lived and brought up in the same country, despite that, getting a job was not easy. I still remember I attended close to 40 plus interviews in the span of 4 months to get a job in HR. Every time I was rejected saying, oh, you have done your degree from London, UK. You don't know much about the local market or the local labor laws. So
you can't win, can you?
Exactly. You don't know about the local labor laws and stuff like that. So why should we hire you? Why don't you go back to UK? And it was also a question of stability. Anton, being from HR field, we all know when we do an interview, we always look at stability. And at that point in time, stability was something where somebody who spends in 5+ years in the same company was supposed to be a stable employee, right? Now, I had worked odd jobs when I was in London. I then worked as a recruiter for a year, and here I was in Chennai looking for jobs, and people were like, oh, you're not going to stay back, mate. We have just come back from London, and might be because of family pressure, and over a period of time, you'll eventually migrate back. So I didn't get jobs. Finally, my dad was reading the newspaper, and he saw an advertisement of a call center opening, and I'm sure both of you know that there was a time when the call centers in India were at peak. All the call center jobs were outsourced to India, and even before I went to London, after I finished my undergraduation, while I was waiting for my London visa and stuff to come through, for a span of 10 months, I did work in a call center, a technical call center. That's where my whole passion for technology comes in, supporting people with setting up their networks and routers and so on. So dad reads the newspaper and says, hey, there is this call center opening. It pays you around 8,000 rupees a month, which in my mind is peanuts, because in my mind I'm carrying this baggage. I am a returnee from UK. I should get somewhere a very hefty salary, and the way I was thinking about my whole experience was very different. And I tell my dad, I have a wife. I know 8,000 rupees is like peanuts. How do you expect me to feed her? And he's like, don't worry about that. We will take care of the financial matters. You just go and get the financial ball rolling at least while you're searching for your jobs. And here I was sitting at the interview, waiting for the assessment to start. And in my mind, I'm talking to the Almighty that, hey, what's going on? Spent a fortune, took loans on my head, went to London, did multiple degrees, and just for the sake of coming back and doing the same call center job that I've been doing even before I did my whole master's. And I'm having this unspoken conversation with the Almighty, and the interviews have already started, but I'm hardly interested in what's going on in the room. And just before me, the other person who was supposed to, it was his turn, and he stands up and says, I'm here to apply for a quality test engineer job. Do you have one? And the HR interviewer say, sorry, we don't have it. And he just walks out of the room. And then my turn came in, and this was the first round. They called it as a jam round, just a minute, where you're supposed to talk about any topic that is thrown at you for a minute. So they asked me to speak about a boat ride. And I say, hey, I'm actually a HR graduate looking for a job in HR. Do you have any openings? They look at me and they discuss something, and they tell me to go and wait outside. I go and have a seat outside. Took almost 3 or 4 hours for them to come back and say that, hey, we do have a requirement. However, it is on a third-party payroll. It is not directly on the payroll of the company. We can pay you a maximum of 6,000 rupees. Imagine, 8,000 rupees is what I came there for. And then they say 6,000 rupees. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to use those words here. But then I still call up my dad and I tell him that, hey, dad, this is what has happened. And he's, take it. Don't worry about the money. It's an amazing breakthrough. 40 plus interviews. You have not got a job in HR. You're getting this opportunity. It's a call center. It's a recruitment job. Take it. And I signed up for it. And since then, there has been no turning back. HR has been my career. It started off in recruitment. It was a very tough role in a call center, you can imagine, right? Wherein every week you have to fill in 50 positions on one side. And on the other side, almost 40 of them are resigning and leaving the company. So it was like a never-ending cycle, working 7 days a week. I was freshly married that time. I hardly could spend time with my firstborn because I was always on the road, going to other cities for campus hiring, meeting with vendors and so on and so forth. It's been an amazing roller coaster ride, and then landed up in Ford 2.5 years later, and almost 14 plus years with Ford.
Did you just apply, or was it?
Yeah, because of the political pressure happening at work, and after 2.5 years, I could not see much of a growth happening, and I said, okay, let's give it a shot outside and see how things are progressing. So I did. I actually went for an interview with Amazon, and I finished the interview, and I was just walking out. I just looked at the building right next door, and I saw the blue oval. That's when I even got to know that, Ford exists in Chennai. And Ford was already in India since 1996. And I'm talking about somewhere in 2010, when I just walked by and I said, Ford exists in Chennai. Okay. And I just walked past, and look at the irony, look at the way things fall in place. I had reached the end of that road and I got a call from a recruitment company saying that there is a requirement for a recruiter in Ford. I didn't have any clue about Ford until then, and I just saw the logo 5 minutes ago, and I get a call saying there's the requirement in Ford. The job description looked amazing. It was really flashy. You'll be supporting 2 different locations. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And that's how Ford came my way. I attended the interview. At the end of it, I already had a couple of other offers in hand with HP and Amazon, but I chose to go with Ford purely because of the percentage of hike that I got on the offer letter. And it's been an amazing journey with Ford.
I can hear all the kind of values that you've built up over time, but it's still interesting to me why you end up in Australia. What made you make that decision as opposed to go to London?
Yeah, so let me fast track. Brilliant point, Anton. As I said earlier at the start of it, if I start talking, it's very difficult for me to put a full stop to it.
But we love your stories, honestly.
Thank you. So coming back to that point, 17 years after I came back from London, and here I was at a stage where, to be honest with you, things in India for me and my family were amazing. I had, from 6,000 rupees where I started, I had reached a stage where I had plenty of money in my hand to live an amazing life. Whatever my boys wanted, I was able to fulfill that. I have given the best of the best for my wife, for my parents. Life was amazing, right? Absolutely no reason for me to disrupt myself. Having said that, one thing I realized was whatever I have is enough or sufficient for the now. But for the future, what if my elder one, for example, wakes up and says that, hey dad, I want to do my master's abroad just the way you did. Do I have enough savings with me? Do I have enough assets with me to help him realize that goal the way my dad realized? Even he didn't have it, of course. He took loans, and my family is the one, my extended family is the one who really helped me to achieve that dream. But this was something that thought that crossed my mind. Second, even looking at the whole lifestyle and the political scenario of the life back home, and comparing from whatever I've been hearing from my other relatives and cousins, I have a huge family in Australia, not in Newcastle, but in Melbourne and Adelaide. And my uncle and my cousins have always been saying that, hey, you have lived a life abroad, you have such an amazing experience with Ford, why don't you migrate to Australia? Now, when this discussion happened with my family and my parents gave me the blessings of, okay, fine, I think it is okay for you to go and explore migration. Obviously, my first thought was London, right? Because I have my master's from there, and what best place would it be to go back? But when I spoke to my friends who are already there, who are settled in, and they gave me honest advice of not exploring London, rather look at other options, which was Canada and Australia. London had become pretty expensive. The job market was not all that great, especially for an HR professional. So there was a lot of research I had to do before deciding where I want to go. And finally, after doing all the research between London, other parts of Europe, US, Canada, and Australia, my personal choice was Canada. Because to be honest, I love living in a colder place. I love the cold climate. After being in London, witnessing the snow and stuff, I used to miss those days because Chennai is really hot. I think the only 3 climates you go through in Chennai is hottest. So I wanted to go to Canada, but again, looking at my family, my wife and kids are someone who cannot withstand that much of cold. I was then looking at the other option, which was Australia. My uncle and the others said that the climate out here is almost like India. It doesn't get that cold as Canada and stuff like that. So that's how I actually zeroed down on Australia.
So did you guys have to go through extensive visas, like a process, or was it difficult to get in or get selected to get in here, or how did you do it?
Yeah, I did go through an agency. Again, one of my family member had referred this agent to me, and I would say that the process was pretty lengthy. It took us almost 2.5 years from the time we started the process to till the time we got the visa, right? Because it is a lengthy process. So you have to first understand what ANZAC code you fall in on, and me being an HR professional, there were only 2 options, HR advisor or HR manager. I was fitting under the HR advisor category, so I had to apply for that. Then you go and apply for your vet assess, you get your documents verified, you undergo an English exam. You have two options. You can either do the IELTS or you do a PTE. So me and my wife had to do a PTE exam. You file for your expression of interest, then a reply comes in, then you register your interest and so on. The whole process in terms of documentation and everything got over within, I would say, a year. But the remaining year and a half is where it takes a toll on you. It is just waiting, right? You have to wait every day. I used to log into the site and see what is the status. Has it changed? You can't contact the embassy. You have to rely on that login of yours or the agent of yours. So my agent will be actually cursing me because I used to always message her or call her and ask, hey, what's happening? And plus the pressure that comes from the family. What happened? Did you get through? Is there any news? And stuff like that.
Yeah, fortunately I came in before there were any English tests. Otherwise I probably would not have been in here.
Yeah. It's amazing to hear that. And your journey taking 2.5 years is that so many people go through that. And so you then apply. And if I remember right, what you said to me the other day is that the visa that you got is a regional visa. And so you had to go to a regional place because that's probably why you didn't opt to go to Ford in Melbourne, because you wouldn't allow you to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Given a choice, if at all I had the opportunity, I would have definitely loved to continue my employment with Ford. I would have applied for an opening in Melbourne. But you're right. The HR advisor role that I had applied for falls under the visa category of 491. It is called a regional skilled migration visa. And there are so many types of visas nowadays. You hardly can even remember the one that is there. So my preference was to go to Adelaide. That was my first preference, again, because of family. And my first application was with South Australia. The next one was with Victoria, because Geelong is just like an hour's drive to Melbourne. And having a lot of family members in Melbourne, I said, okay, Geelong is still okay. And my last preference was New South Wales, because in Newcastle, I just have one family, who I know out here, right? And Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne are supposed to be cities, and everything else falls in the regional category. Now, coincidentally, when I got my reply, New South Wales was the first state that replied and accepted my application and asked me to file for the registration of interest. And once you pay your fees, you cannot apply for any other state. Now, after I paid my fees, a week later is when I got the response from South Australia, but it was too late by then. So I could not change my decision. The research that I did, after Sydney, the next biggest populated city was Newcastle, right? And where you have more population is where you have more job opportunities as well, right? So that's how I actually landed here.
But you did not walk into a job here, right? You came about 6 months ago, and where you're tracking now?
Yeah, I think when I left India, it was a very difficult decision, right? Because as I said, I was well established. I had a job, an amazing job where I was growing in my ranks. I had enough money in my hands. Disrupted my whole family when I came here, because I came here with no job in hand. All I had was the financial savings that I had for the last 14 odd years that I worked with Ford. I just came with that money with the hope, with the assumption that I will get a job after I come in here. And to be honest, it has not been easy. It was a very difficult experience to start with. But even before that, as just to join my connection, Anton, to the question about Australia, once we decided that yes, it is going to be Australia, that we are going to migrate, and we finished the whole process, in our minds, me and my wife are thinking that, oh, okay, we have already been abroad earlier, so we know how life is. We will do any casual jobs that come our way, and we will survive till I get a job in HR. So that is the kind of belief and faith we came with. But after coming here, when we went and attended interviews for all these casual jobs, and I'll just give you an example. My wife and my son, both of them attended an interview with one of the most reputed supermarkets in Australia. And my son got picked, but my wife didn't, even though she had prior experience of working in a similar supermarket set up in UK. Now, when we try to decipher the whole thing, we realize that in terms of the labor laws and in terms of the money that gets paid, for someone of my wife's age needs to be paid, for example, $30 an hour. And someone my son's age needs to get paid only $15 an hour. Now, a person who is half the age, young enough, young blood, to run around and do all the works that are thrown at you in a supermarket and environment for almost half the money, why would somebody even go and hire someone aged as my wife or me? Now, we attended interviews with servos and supermarkets and you name the odd job, and we have tried everything possible, but we couldn't get through, right? Even if we cleared the interview, we failed at the medical test. We have to bend and lift 15 kilos and stuff like that. I applied for a job as a merchandiser, which basically meant I need to carry loaves of breads for one of the biggest bakeries of Australia to various supermarkets like Coles and Woolworths, and I need to go and stock them up.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty easy, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I didn't clear it. It did not require an MBA degree or an HR degree to do that. All it required was physical efforts, and I was ready to do it. Even though I was ready to do it, I didn't clear my medicals for some reason. So all those things, when that started happening, the reality, as the word that I use, that kind of hit us very hard, especially my wife, because we never expected that even to get a casual job, it's going to be this difficult, right? So when we came in here, thank God we had a cousin of mine with whom we were living with him. He gave us a room in his house and we were settled that way. We had a shelter on our head, above our heads. But right from India, we had done some homework in which school is the best for my children, and we wanted our children to go into that particular school. But we could not get the admission because apparently there is something called as catchment. We need if you want to send your children to a particular school, you should have a house in that particular catchment.
Yeah.
Now the school that was in the catchment of my cousin's house was something which did not have good reviews, and I'm just cognizant I'm not quoting names and stuff like that out here, but we did some homework and my cousins and others said, no, this is not the right thing for you, this particular school is pretty good. So we ended up meeting the principal and saying that, hey, can you give us an exception? We are just few minutes away and I know we are outside your catchment and stuff like that. Didn't work out. We reached out to so many schools in Newcastle, in and around Newcastle, in Maitland. It didn't work out. Then we said, all right, looks like we have to get a house in this particular catchment. And then we started searching for houses. And that comes to us as a surprise because we got rejected every time because we did not have a job. I can't put my children in school because I don't have a house in that catchment. I can't have a house because I don't have a job. So just imagine in that kind of a scenario when you have come under a skilled regional visa where the government wants you to live in a regional area, and then you come in and you don't get admissions in schools, you don't get a job. But let me also put this on record. One amazing thing that this country has is something called as food deliveries or the package deliveries, that options that are available. Since I had an overseas license, I had to come here, and my cousin again recommended this. I purchased a second-hand car from Facebook Marketplace, and I applied for a ABN, a business number, and I started doing deliveries. Right? Again, even though in my mind I was prepared to do all kind of jobs when I left from Ford, but somewhere or the other culturally in India, let me put it this way, somebody who does food deliveries or somebody who does a blue collar job or somebody working in a servo is not as well respected as what you have in Australia. So you're looked down upon when, oh, this guy is working in a servo, oh, this guy is doing food deliveries, right? Now, somewhere in our minds, this thing was like, oh shucks, look at me, 17 years of experience in Ford and I'm sitting and doing food deliveries out here.
So we're talking DoorDash and Uber Eats and that sort of thing.
And Menulog, absolutely, that is the one. So started doing food deliveries with that, even though it helps you pay the bills and stuff like that, but somewhere it does take a toll on your mental strength because you are here applying for HR jobs. You have almost 18 years of experience working in a blue chip company and stuff like that. You get rejected in every other job interview you come across. But housing being an issue, even though I was doing these food delivery jobs, the rental agents were not agreeing to accept that as a full-time job, and they didn't want to look at my bank statements and stuff like that. So it was 2 months down the line, the kind of situation that we were in. And I will be very blunt in saying this. I think we took a call that we are going back. It is.
I wanted to ask you at what time during that journey did you have the conversation that says, "Oh my goodness, this might not work out. This is just too hard."
2 months down the line, because we came up with so many assumptions and expectations that it's going to be a piece of cake, a bed of roses. But when we realized that it is just a journey that we are walking on thorns, everywhere is just rejection. And the kind of state my boys were in, they had to leave school and halfway in India and come here. The other pressure that we were going through was the kind of experience that we are making our boys go through at this age. So all those things started taking a toll on our head, not getting jobs, not getting admission, not getting a rental property or a house. Even though my cousin was kind enough in not asking us a dime in terms of accommodation or food or anything, I think culturally, again, it was hitting us really hard that we are living for free with him.
But then you have this massive exchange rate, right, between rupees and Australian dollars.
Absolutely.
So you just see this bank statement going down at a speed of knots, right?
Absolutely. I think 54 rupees was the value at that point. 1 Australian dollar was Indian 54 rupees, right? Now, we came with the assumption of bringing all life savings, which probably could last us for 4 to 6 months. But here we are, where the weekly rent, the bare minimum we are talking about is $550 to $600. And multiply that, and of course, coming from India, every dollar you spend, you automatically start converting it in your mind. Oh, a loaf of bread is 600 rupees, for example.
Yeah, Ben did the same, right? He still does 20 years later.
Yeah, and you're like, oh my God, this is so expensive. Every other place you stare around and you're like $10 or cent, $15, and you're converting it. You have a mobile calculator on all the time.
That's in your head all the time, eh?
Yeah, so it was tough. But again, as I said, the write-up that I wrote on my LinkedIn after I got my job, and me and my family are someone who have very strong belief and roots in religion, right? And in the Quran, the translation of one of the verses says that they plan, He plans, and by He we are referring to Allah, the Almighty. They plan, He plans, He is the best of planners,
Yes.
right? And here we are with our own plan of migrating to Australia with all these visions and uprooting ourselves and coming here and not getting a breakthrough. The only thing that made us go on day in and day out was this belief and faith of ours that something or the other will happen and the Almighty has a better plan for us. And here we are today. In 3 days from now, I will be completing exactly 6 months of coming to Australia. And in these last 6 months, minus the first 2 months, because as I said, nothing was working out, 27th of October is when I landed here. 27th of December is when we got this house, which is nothing less than a miracle. Without a job, without a history, I think the agent who helped us in getting this house came in the form of an angel and really helped us to. So maybe they liked our story. It really goes back to the story, because I remember the second house that she showed us and we got rejected, and I was blunt in sharing my story with her, and whatever I just told you guys, not so long, but like an elevator speech. Maybe that is something that overwhelmed her, and she really helped us in pitching our case forward and helping us getting this house. Because otherwise, as I said, this is definitely a miracle, because every house that we used to go and see, there are 15 or 20 other families already there waiting for it. And there are families, some of them who are doctors, some of them who have an amazing history, who have been in the country for 10 years and trying to change houses. And here we are trying to compete with them with no history whatsoever. Yes, we did have money. We were offering them 6 months rent in advance or a year's rent in advance and so on. But that never worked out, right? And this miracle happened, and we got this house exactly 2 months after we came in. Because we got this house in this catchment, we were easily able to get admission for my boys in the school that we desired. My wife got a job, a decent casual job with Port Stephens Council. My eldest son got a part-time job in one of the supermarkets. I was able to do food deliveries for Uber, DoorDash and so on. The only last brick that was missing in this whole foundation was a full-time job in HR, and I had been trying for several job openings. It attended so many interviews. Most of the time I was turned down, saying that you're overqualified. The irony, when I came back from UK to India and they said you don't have the local market experience, you don't know the local labor laws, you don't know the regulations, and here I am 18 years down the line getting the same feedback from people. But thanks to the guidance from several people, especially Anup, who has been a great mentor to me, and that really made me kept going, kept applying for these jobs, and this particular opportunity came through. And I will be starting to work for NSW Health, the Central Coast Local Health District, from the 28th of this month.
Wonderful.
27, I complete 6 months, and 28th is when I start my job.
Wonderful, congratulations.
Yeah,
It's almost like a hero's journey, right? In a sense of how hard it is, and it's not to be understated. Your first 2 months, if I understand it, was like after the first 2 months, why are we here, and is this really worth it? And then a breakthrough happens, you get your house, and I would imagine that my wife will definitely agree that the agent was an angel, so I support that. And then things start falling in place. So at what point in these 6 months did you say, okay, I feel less like a stranger now?
That question, I would say I'm a stranger because one, you don't know this place like how you know your home. You've been born and brought up in a place, right? Two, the cultures are very different. Culturally, the way we have been brought up back home versus the culture that we see here is very different, right? And you still get this sense of being a stranger, especially there have been few instances during my stint of doing these food deliveries where your customers treat you in a very bad way. My children being treated in a couple of instances, being bullied in school or being looked down on as a migrant or somebody of a different color, for example. So yeah, there are few instances that really hit you hard, but I think, as I said, since we were prepared for this mentally right from the time we applied and we thought of this migration, as a family we have been closely knit and we speak about these instances day in and day out and look at it as a source of strength. And to establish ourselves as somebody who is accepted, I think it will take time. In my mind, 6 months down the line, I still believe I'm still a stranger trying to get accepted amongst an audience, which is very different than what my beliefs are.
Just for me, interesting, coming from South Africa, everybody's got their reasons why they want to be here, and if you speak to most of our friends, they will say it's because of the children.
Yeah.
You know, why do you think your children will be better off here than they would be in India?
So, see, many reasons, Ben. So let me start this way. First of all, the environment, in terms of the environment that is there in India, the nature, in terms of the political environment, and many other aspects, I think things out here are much better. Number two, I think financially also, even though, of course, Australia has its own taxes and expenses and so on, based on my experience that I've had in the UK, even though I was doing casual jobs, whatever money we earned, we were able to save. But back home in India, it's really difficult to have that much of money that you can save. There are no benefits as such, right? Whatever you earn, and I can probably use this parlance that the income tax that I used to pay in India, I don't get a single benefit from the government. Unlike here, right? Because once you become a citizen or you have so many other benefits in terms of medical, the schooling is free for my children now. And there are many benefits financially, if I can put it that way. And the overall lifestyle that they get, the overall view of life that they get out here is very different than what they can get back home.
We listen with awe to your story because it takes an adventurer and it also takes somebody that has got an enormous amount of resilience to do these sort of things, right? The role that you play in your family is likely also, I don't want to genderize this thing, but you feel like you need to be the breadwinner here and you need to provide for your family and that sort of thing. And it took a while. So it takes a lot of resilience, right?
Absolutely, you're spot on. I think culturally back home in India, it's always the man who is looked at as the breadwinner, right? Even in our initial days when our relatives called us up, there was total pressure on me saying that, oh, you're the man of the house, you should get a job first. And even though my wife got a job, there were people who were still like, oh, she has got a job, that's all right, but you should get a job because you are the man, you are the breadwinner of the family. So there has always been that social stigma. But having said that, my close family, that's my parents, my in-laws and others, have always been someone who has, right from childhood, we have always looked, we are gender neutral. And we have always ensured that no matter whether it's my wife or me, we both run the family together.
But maybe there's so many other things we could talk about, but I think it's probably important at this juncture to ask Afzal this kind of question about if somebody comes to him today and says, look, I'm thinking of coming to Australia. What were the things that you'd say to him or her? What will work, they have to watch out for, and what are the kind of things that they need to do?
Yes, I'm a person who always believes in reality, Anton. So if somebody comes my way and if I'm talking in the context of a stranger, a suitcase and a story, all I'll tell them is in your suitcase while you are packing the emotional stuff, the missing a family and stuff like that, the most important things that you should pack is patience, belief in yourself, and if you're somebody who is very strong in religion, then of course belief in the Almighty. And emotional resilience is something that are the three most primary ingredients that you would need when you are migrating to not just Australia, any part of the world that you go to, right? Because of course things are going to be very different. You would be coming here with a vision, a plan of your own, but as I said earlier in this recording, the Almighty has a plan, and trust me, it's always better. Whatever is in the better of you is what you will get through. So till that plan is materialized, for me it took 6 months. It might take much quicker for you, or it can take even longer. Everyone has a story. Every story is different, but somewhere or the other, I think it all boils down to this fact of how much patience you have, because there is always a very thin line between making it or breaking it. Again, going back to my mantra, love it, like it, live with it, right? It all depends on how you perceive life and how you want to take it up. So a little bit of lots of patience, lots of adventure spirits. Whatever is thrown at you, you have to do it, whether it's a job like how I've been doing food deliveries and so on. But eventually you will get there. And as a country, I think Australia is, in my perspective, is really amazing. It has really helped us. It really gave me the nature that I see here, that fresh air that I breathe, in terms of my health. A lot of things have been a positive for me out here. There were certain ailments that I had back home, which in a span of just 6 months I was able to overcome after coming out here. The air you breathe is amazing. It's very different out here. So there are a lot of positives. While it might sound very emotionally broken when I speak about financial terms and jobs and so on, but the brighter side of life is Australia has opened its arms and embraced us and welcomed us into this place. The people are also amazing. Again, to be honest, there was a lot of baggage that I carried from my experiences in London, which was like 20 years ago, and from what people have been speaking back home, or the assumptions that we had about how Australians are. But trust me, our experience here has been fantastic. People here are just amazing. They have welcomed us with open arms. And it's so far 6 months, and it's been a real good experience for us.
Good stuff.
Yeah, maybe just one or two last things.
Sure.
If you think about it, what did you learn in Australia that you did not expect?
The labour laws, of course. That's the first thing that I am looking at. But what I learned, which I would say in my case at least, I came prepared for this, was be open to do anything that comes my way. Yeah. Not just be rigid in your mind that because I have 18 years of HR experience or a corporate experience, I will only do that kind of a job. I have always been someone, and again, thanks to the upbringing of my parents, always been someone who is ready to test unknown waters. After coming here, doing, as I mentioned earlier, doing food deliveries, sometimes in the back of my mind I was like, hey, have I really spent so many years of working in HR just to do this? But I was able to quickly get over that feeling and not allow that feeling to sulk and pull me down. So I think that mindset of mine has really helped me to sail these moments over the last 6 months and help my family. And because I have always been talking about this with them, it has eventually helped them as well to reach where we are today. And of course, the support from family is something which is really important, because if I had not had that from my wife and 2 sons, trust me, I would not have been here today. I would have gone back home.
Yeah. So have you been back home since you've been here?
No, not yet. I'm planning to do that in December, but no, we have been here.
So I've got some good news for you. I think for me in any case, and a lot of people I've spoken to, one of the times that you feel that you've settled and you feel comfortable being here is after you've been back where you came from the first time. And when you come back to your own bed, you're familiar with the streets, you're familiar with the house, it's your house. So you'll see, when you come back, I'll have another chat to you, you'll see you'll suddenly feel that things has changed. And for me, it definitely changed after I've been away, back to South Africa the first time and then came back after that. It does. After that, there's a bit of a step change. It gets easier, then things become familiar and you feel like, okay, it's not that hard, I've done the hard yards.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Ben. In fact, they say the first of anything that you do after migration, let it be your first birthday or the first occasion, religious occasion or anything of that sense, right? You always have this in the back of your mind that my last birthday I was with my family back home. This is how we celebrated it. in terms of us, because as I said, we're very religious people. We just had Ramzan that went by, and we had the Eid that we celebrated. Back home, it's a huge affair. All of us gather together under one roof, have meal together and stuff like that. And here we are, just the four of us celebrating it. So the first is always something which is very hard. And as you rightly said, I'm looking forward for the trip back home end of this year. And once we come back, I will definitely call up and share with you how that experience is.
Mate, it's been great having you. It's been great hearing your story. I think your story will resonate with a lot of people, not just from India, but all over the world coming here. Certainly, a lot of things you spoke about, Anton and I spoke about, it's universal. Doesn't matter where you come from. So, no, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing your story.
Pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, hopefully it'll just get better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I echo what Ben has said. It's been an absolute inspirational to talk to you, Afzal. I think that if I have to think about what are the things that stand out for me from what you've come here, then it is certainly that you stick it out. You were at a point where you just didn't know whether it's going to work out, and you just say, no, that's why I've come here. And I think that with that kind of resilience, you've got a great future ahead, and I wish you all the best. I think that you have an amazing story for other people to hear, especially for those that have been here for 3 months and say, oh my goodness, I'm going to go back now. Or for those that have been here 6 years to say, I remember what that was like. Or for those sitting at home and saying, do I make this trip, to hear what it takes, but it can be done. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for it being a fantastic session with you. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Anton, and for this opportunity. And one thing I would like to tell the viewers is, when I was invited to this, until then I didn't know about A Suitcase, A Stranger and a Story, and I did go into the site. I was really intrigued to know what it is all about, and I saw 2 episodes by Ben and Anton. One thing I can tell you is this is a very noble initiative which is really going to help a lot of peoples across the world as you watch this, which is really going to give you a sense of, oh, even I am going through the same. When I heard Anton and Ben's story, and again, keep in mind, I'm just 6 months old here, but they have had a much bigger stint out here, right? And their stories, their experiences have been very different, and so was mine, and so will be yours, the viewers who are watching this. But I think the few key things that I took away, and I saw similarities in my life, was having a sense of adventure. Deciding to take this or embark on this journey itself requires sheer guts for you to leave everything behind and then start afresh. And also the other things that are pretty interesting and very important for us to take away from these sessions would be how to have patience, right? That is something which is really important. My other takeaway from both Anton and Ben was there will be a light at the end of the tunnel, right? It is just a matter of time, right? Have faith in yourself, faith in the Almighty, and things will definitely fall in place. Always remember that everyone's suitcase is going to be different of what you're going to pack inside and what you bring over. Everyone's story is going to be different, but at the end of the day, as someone who has migrated, let it be on a regional visa or a student visa or whatever visas you're on, at the end of the day, the stranger we are, we have the power in our hands to shape our story the way we want to. And these conversations that we hear, and I had this privilege and opportunity of being part of, is something that really gives you that energy and motivation to keep going and believing that you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. So again, thank you so much, Anton and Ben, for this fantastic opportunity, and I really hope the story of mine inspires people or helps people to see that light at the end of the tunnel the way I got inspired and when I heard your and Ben's story. Thank you so much.